The cell was 3 meters square. It had a cot, a sanitation unit, and a single light panel that flickered on a 17-second cycle. Lyra Voss had counted that cycle approximately 47,000 times. She had been here for 11 months, 16 days, and 9 hours. Outside, somewhere beyond the walls she could not see, the war continued. The Vorthan Dominion was crushing the last resistance of the Free Worlds Alliance. Her people were dying. Her cause was lost. And she, Commander Lyra Voss of the Alliance Navy, was the Vorthans' most valuable prisoner. Not for information. She had none left to give. They had extracted everything months ago through methods she tried very hard not to remember. Not for exchange. There was no one left to exchange her for. She was kept as a trophy, a symbol. The last high-ranking Alliance officer still alive, locked in a cage beneath the Vorthan capital, a reminder to any who still dreamed of freedom that resistance meant nothing. The flickering light buzzed. 17 seconds on. 17 seconds off. On. Off. On. Off. Lyra sat on the cot, her back against the cold wall, and stared at nothing. She had stopped crying months ago. She had stopped hoping even earlier. Hope was a luxury for people who had not yet learned the truth, that the universe was dark and cold and utterly indifferent to the suffering of those who fought against the tide. Today, they had taken her for what they called maintenance. A Vorthan officer, a sleek, silver-skinned creature with eyes like polished obsidian, had explained it to her in that calm, clinical voice they all used. The war is over. Your people are being resettled into designated zones. You will live. You will be comfortable. But you must understand your new place in the order of things. This maintenance is to help you accept. The maintenance had involved electricity and a chair that tilted backward. She had not screamed. She had learned that screaming only made it last longer. Now she was back in her cell, her body a roadmap of fresh pain, and she was trying to remember what it felt like to be free. She couldn't. She closed her eyes. The darkness behind her lids was the same as the darkness in front of them. The same as the darkness in her soul. This is it, she thought. This is how it ends. Not with a bang. Not with a final battle. Just fading. In a cell. Alone. She had no tears left. She had no hope left. She had nothing left. She closed her eyes hopelessly. And then she heard the door open. Part 2. The Intruder. Lyra did not move. It was probably just a guard, here for another round of maintenance. Or maybe they had finally decided she was more trouble than she was worth. Maybe this was the end. She kept her eyes closed. If they were going to kill her, she would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her fear. But the footsteps that approached were wrong. Vorthan guards moved with precision. Every step was identical, measured, military. These footsteps were different, hesitant, careful, almost human. A voice spoke. Low, male, young. Commander Voss? She opened her eyes. A man stood in the doorway of her cell. He was human, unmistakably human, wearing a plain gray jumpsuit with no insignia. He was young, maybe mid-20s, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes that looked too large for his face. He carried no weapon. He held a small device in one hand that pulsed with a soft blue light. Lyra stared at him. She must be hallucinating. The maintenance had finally broken something in her mind. "You're not real," she said. Her voice was a rasp. She hadn't spoken in days. "I'm real," he said. "My name is Dorian. Dorian Cole. I'm here to get you out." She laughed. It was an ugly sound, scraping out of her throat. Out. Out of a Vorthan prison. Alone. You. Not alone. He stepped closer, holding up the device. This is a phase shift generator. It creates a localized distortion in space-time. For about 30 seconds, we're effectively invisible and intangible, long enough to get to the surface. That's not possible. Phase shift technology doesn't exist. It does now. He smiled. It was a small smile, almost shy. I invented it. Lyra sat up. The movement sent fresh pain through her body, but she ignored it. She looked at this boy, this man, and tried to understand. Who are you? Really? Dorian's smile faded. I'm a scientist. From Earth. I was part of an observation team studying the war. We were supposed to stay neutral. But then... He looked away. Then I saw what they were doing. To prisoners. To civilians. I couldn't just watch. So you came alone? To break me out of the most secure prison in the Dominion. I didn't come alone. I came with this. He held up the device again. It's enough. Lyra stood. Her legs nearly gave out, but she grabbed the wall and forced herself upright. She had spent 11 months being broken. She would not die on this floor. What's the catch? She asked. Dorian hesitated. The phase shift only lasts 30 seconds. That's enough to get out of the cell block, but not out of the facility. We'll still have to fight our way to the surface. I can't fight. Look at me. I know. His voice was gentle. That's why I'm not asking you to. I'll get you to the surface. My ship is waiting. After that, you're free. Lyra looked at him. This strange, brave, impossibly young man who had come alone into the heart of darkness to save a stranger. Why? She asked. Why risk your life for me? Dorian met her eyes. Because someone has to. Because the galaxy can't just let the darkness win. Because... He trailed off, then shook his head. We don't have time for philosophy. We have 28 seconds of phase shift left on this charge. Are you coming? Lyra took a breath. It hurt. Everything hurt. Let's go. Part 3, the Ascent. The phase shift was like walking through water made of light. The world blurred. Colors ran together. Lyra could see Vorthan guards standing frozen in the corridors, their silver forms distorted like reflections in a rippling pool. Dorian held her arm, guiding her, pulling her forward. They moved through the prison like ghosts, past interrogation rooms, past cells filled with prisoners who didn't see them, past a guard room where a dozen Vorthans sat playing some kind of game, utterly unaware. 20 seconds. They reached a stairwell. Dorian pulled her up, his grip steady on her arm. Her legs screamed. Her lungs burned. But she climbed. 15 seconds. The stairwell ended at a heavy door. Dorian pushed it open. They emerged into a loading bay, filled with cargo containers and empty vehicles. At the far end, Lyra could see daylight, pale and weak, but daylight. 10 seconds. They ran. Lyra's vision was starting to blur at the edges. She didn't know if it was the phase shift or her body finally giving out. 5 seconds. They reached the entrance. Dorian pushed through the final door, and suddenly they were outside, under a gray Vorthan sky, the air cold and sharp. 3 seconds. A small ship sat in the shadows of a cargo container. It was battered, unremarkable, exactly the kind of ship no one would notice. 2 seconds. Dorian half carried her up the ramp. The door began to close behind them. 1 second. The phase shift dropped. Alarms began to blare somewhere in the distance. 0. The door sealed. The ship's engines hummed to life. And Lyra Voss, for the first time in 11 months, was free. Part 4. The Silence. The ship was small. 2 seats in the cockpit, a cramped sleeping area, a galley the size of a closet. It was the most beautiful thing Lyra had ever seen. Dorian guided her to the co-pilot's seat and strapped her in. His hands moved over the controls with practiced ease, and the ship lifted off, climbing through the gray atmosphere. Below them, the prison grew smaller. Then the city. Then the planet itself, shrinking to a dot in the viewport. Lyra watched it go.
She didn't speak.
She couldn't. Dorian set a course for the outer system and then turned to look at her. "You're safe now," he said quietly. "We'll need to make a few jumps to lose any pursuit, but I have a safe house. A place no one knows about. You can rest there." Lyra nodded. She still couldn't speak. Dorian seemed to understand. He turned back to the controls and let the silence stretch. They flew for hours. Lyra drifted in and out of consciousness, her body finally allowed to rest. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the cell, the flickering light, the silver faces of her torturers. But when she opened them, she saw him, Dorian, sitting calmly at the controls, watching the stars, his presence a quiet anchor in the vast darkness. She closed her eyes hopelessly, remembering the cell. She opened them to him. Part 5. The Safe House. The Safe House was a small station orbiting a dead moon in an uncharted system. It had been abandoned for decades, Dorian explained, but he had spent months repairing it, stocking it, making it ready. For what? Lyra asked. Her voice was still rough, but stronger now. For this. He docked the ship with practiced ease. For anyone who needed to disappear. The station was small but comfortable. Living quarters, a galley, a workshop full of tools and half-finished projects, and a viewport that looked out on endless stars. Lyra stood at that viewport for a long time, just staring. Dorian brought her food, real food, not prison slop, and sat with her while she ate. He didn't ask questions. He didn't push. He just stayed. Days passed. Then weeks. Lyra slept.
She ate.
She stared at the stars. Slowly, painfully, the weight in her chest began to lighten. She learned about Dorian. He was 26. His parents had been scientists too, killed in an accident when he was young. He had grown up alone, raised by a succession of mentors who taught him physics and engineering and how to survive. He had built his first ship at 19. He had invented phase shift technology at 23. "Why haven't you sold it?" Lyra asked one day. "You'd be rich. Famous." He shrugged. "The wrong people would use it. The Vorthan. Other empires. Technology like that, it should only be used to help people, not to hurt them." She looked at him. In another life, he could have been a prince of industry, a celebrated genius. Instead, he lived alone on a forgotten station, using his brilliance to rescue strangers. "You're a good man, Dorian Cole." He ducked his head, embarrassed. "I'm just a guy who hates seeing people suffer." Part 6. The Return. Lyra healed. Her body recovered. Her mind took longer, but day by day, the nightmares came less frequently. She began to help Dorian with his projects, simple tasks at first, then more complex ones. She had been an engineer before the war, before command, before the prison. The work felt good, honest. One day, she asked the question she had been avoiding. "The war, is it really over?" Dorian was quiet for a moment. "The fighting is over. The alliance is gone. The Vorthan control everything now. And my people? The ones who survived. They're in resettlement zones. Not prisons exactly. More like controlled communities. They have food, shelter, but no freedom." Lyra nodded. She had expected this, but hearing it still hurt. "I should go to them," she said. "They need leaders." Dorian looked at her. "You need more time." "I've had time. Months. While they suffer. You've had months to learn to sleep again. To eat again. To be a person again." His voice was gentle but firm. "You're not ready to lead. Not yet." She wanted to argue. But she knew he was right.
Part 7. The Choice.
Another month passed. Lyra and Dorian fell into a rhythm. Work during the day, if you could call it day, in the unchanging dark of space, and conversation in the evenings. They talked about everything. Physics, philosophy, the nature of hope, the meaning of home. She learned that he played an instrument, a small stringed thing from his home world, and he played for her sometimes simple melodies that filled the station with warmth. He learned that she had once loved to dance, and he cleared the workshop floor and played music from his datapad, and she taught him steps that were awkward and wonderful. One evening, sitting at the viewport, watching a nebula bloom in the distance, Lyra realized something. She was happy. Not recovered, not healed, but happy. Here, in this tiny station with this strange, gentle man, she had found something she thought the war had destroyed forever. The ability to feel peace. She turned to look at him. He was watching the nebula too, his face soft in the colored light.
Dorian.
He looked at her. I need to tell you something. He waited. I was broken when you found me. Completely broken. I had given up. I had closed my eyes and accepted that the darkness was all there was. She reached out and took his hand. And then I opened them and you were there.
You saved me.
Not just from the prison, from the darkness inside. His fingers tightened around hers. You saved yourself. I just opened the door. You did more than that. She squeezed his hand. You stayed. You didn't ask for anything. You just stayed. He was quiet for a moment. Then, softly, I stayed because I couldn't leave. Because from the moment I saw your file, read about what you'd done, what you'd sacrificed, I knew you were someone worth saving. And then I met you, and you were even more than I imagined. Lyra felt tears prick her eyes. Real tears. The first she'd shed in months that weren't born of pain. What happens now? She asked. Dorian looked at the nebula, then back at her. Now you finish healing. And then, if you want, we figure out the rest together. She leaned against him, her head on his shoulder, watching the colors swirl. Together, she repeated. I like that. Epilogue, the opening. A year later, Lyra Voss stood before a crowd of 10,000 people in a hidden valley on a forgotten world. They were her people, survivors of the war, refugees from the resettlement zones. They had come because word had spread. Commander Voss was alive. And she had a plan. She looked out at the faces, tired, hopeful, scared, determined, and felt the weight of their expectations. Behind her, in the shadows at the edge of the stage, Dorian waited. He had built the communication network that had brought them here. He had designed the phase shift technology that would help them move unseen. He had given her the time she needed to become whole again. She took a breath. My people, she began. We have lost. The war is over. The Vorthen believe they have won. A murmur ran through the crowd. But they are wrong. Silence. They think victory means crushing resistance. They think power means controlling bodies.
But they don't understand.
True victory isn't about what you take. It's about what you protect. True power isn't about how many you command. It's about how many you love. She thought of Dorian, of the moment she had opened her eyes and seen him standing in the doorway of her cell. They tried to break me. They tried to make me believe the darkness was all that existed. And for a long time, I believed them. Her voice strengthened. But then someone showed me that light still exists. Someone came for me when I couldn't come for myself. And that is what we will do now. We will come for each other. We will find the light, even in the darkest places. And we will build something new. The crowd was silent. Then slowly someone began to clap. Then another. Then 100. Then 1,000. Lyra looked back at Dorian. He was smiling. That same shy smile she had seen in her cell, what felt like a lifetime ago. She turned back to the crowd, her people, her future. She had closed her eyes hopelessly in a prison cell, convinced the darkness would never end. And then she had opened them, and he was there. And the darkness didn't stand a chance.
The end.